Imagine a world where Indian drumming is as common as piano or guitar. We're diving deep today, folks.
Deep?
Yeah, into the world of Keda music.
Yeah.
Have you heard of them?
I have.
Yeah. So they're doing some pretty fascinating things with Indian drumming.
Yeah, they are.
And we've got some stuff from their website, so, excerpts, all sorts of things like that. They will be uncovering, hopefully, some really cool stuff. Electronic tablas.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And a universal notation system.
Okay.
And we'll talk about how they're kind of trying to bring a traditional art form to a wider world. So,
sounds fascinating.
Ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right. So right off the bat, Keda music. They have this statement on their website.
Okay.
That says, our mission is to make Indian drumming accessible to a wider world.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty bold, right?
It is, yeah. I think there's a few things going on there. First off, the tabla in North Indian classical music.
Yeah.
Of course, you have the learning curve, right? I mean, it's an intricate technique.
Very much so.
And it's, traditionally it's been passed down through generations, kind of a master-apprentice relationship.
Yeah. Not something you just pick up. Yeah.
And then I think there's a cultural perception, at least, maybe more in the West, that Indian drumming is, it's kind of esoteric.
Right. So
Keda music wants to kind of
break down those barriers.
Yeah. And they're pretty ambitious about it. They even talk about, their vision is to see Indian drums, in orchestras, in bands, in schools, everywhere.
That's ambitious.
Yeah. So it really kind of shows you that they want to take this and just integrate it into all these different...
In all these different styles.
Yeah. What do you think the implications of that are, of that vision?
I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, if that were to happen, I mean, imagine just the blending of cultural influences.
Yeah.
You have Indian rhythms and techniques finding their way into jazz or rock or even classical compositions.
Oh, wow.
Composers would have a whole new palette of sounds and rhythms to play with. I mean, that could lead to some really innovative music.
And then, from an educational standpoint, think about how much more inclusive and representative music classes could become.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It really is exciting to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So, speaking of breaking down barriers, they've developed this thing called a Tabla Touch. It's
So that's an electronic tabla.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm. They say it's the world's first electronic tabla.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think that's significant?
Well, I mean, it's portable, it's easy to use, so it's more accessible to beginners, right?
In a sense.
Imagine you can practice with headphones or, adjust the volume. Plus, it integrates with all the modern music technology. So, you can use it, with your computer. You can incorporate these sounds into digital compositions, recordings.
Right.
This could be huge for genre electronic music, or film scoring.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it like a gateway to a whole new sonic world.
I like that. You mentioned new possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example? What kind of musical style or technique might be made possible with this Tabla Touch?
Yeah.
That maybe wasn't as, feasible with the traditional instrument.
With the Tabla Touch, a composer could program those intricate patterns.
Oh, wow.
And layer them with other instruments and create this fusion of traditional Indian rhythms with modern musical styles.
Oh, cool.
So you could have a driving rock beat, but underpinned by this, really intricate pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of fusion wouldn't be as easy to achieve with a traditional tabla.
That's a really cool example.
Yeah.
But, of course, there are always two sides to every coin.
Well, I think, honestly, I see the Tabla Touch more as a complement to the traditional instrument.
Okay.
Not necessarily a replacement.
Right.
It could be a fantastic tool for introducing people to the world of Indian drumming, sparking their interest.
Yeah.
And then who knows, maybe they'll be inspired to pursue the the traditional art form as well.
Yeah, like a stepping stone kind of.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about the tabla touch. Let's move on to another fascinating aspect of Keda music.
Okay.
Which is their development of a universal notation system.
Okay.
For Indian drumming. Yeah, they mentioned it's being used in schools and colleges already. Yeah. So could you walk us through how that works? Like, how does this notation system actually...
Well, it's a fascinating development because, traditional Indian music has relied so heavily on oral tradition, passed down from generation to generation.
Right.
And while that's been wonderful for preserving the art form, it's also created a bit of a barrier for those outside the tradition.
Right.
Right. So this notation system is really aiming to bridge that gap.
Okay.
And what they've done is they've used a combination of symbols and Western notation elements to capture the complexities of Indian rhythms, including, all the intricate bowls, which are the syllables representing different strokes on the tabla.
Right.
So it's this standardized system that allows anyone, regardless of their musical background, to understand and play Indian rhythms.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So we've got this, this innovative instrument, this notation system.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they offer all these, like, resources.
It's amazing.
Yeah, like lessons, sheet music, course books, videos.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they're targeting everyone.
They are.
From beginners to seasoned pros.
Exactly. They've created a whole ecosystem for learning and engaging with Indian drumming. It's really remarkable. Quite remarkable, yeah. So to sum up, Keda music is on this really ambitious mission.
They are to make Indian drumming globally accessible. Mm-hmm. They've got this amazing Tabla Touch, a universal notation system, and a whole suite of resources.
It's a multifaceted approach.
It is.
Yeah.
But here's a thought to kind of leave you with as we wrap up here. Imagine a world where Indian drumming is as common as piano or guitar.
Wow.
How would that change the soundscape of music?
Yeah.
Would it create new genres? Would it lead to a greater understanding and appreciation of Indian culture?
It's a great question.
I mean, it's just really fascinating to think about.
It is.
The possibilities.
Yeah.
So if any of this has intrigued you, I encourage you to check out the Keda Music website.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.